YouTube, we're talking college sports in the Deep South, where college football is king, and on the plains of Auburn. The battle cry is War Eagle. Kennard Vernon Stewart once again for the podcast here on Vernon Speaks Sports Auburn, where it's always great to be an Auburn Tiger. Fearless and true gang, let's go ahead and get this comment section active. Go ahead and like this video. Click the subscription button. Click twice for the notifications. I think YouTube has this thing now to where you have a choice as to how you want to keep up with the content. I suggest you click all because you definitely don't want to miss any of the Auburn content as we do it here on YouTube like nobody's business. Auburn coming into the 2019 season with a quarterback battle obviously in hand. We're going to talk about that some this week. The good news is Auburn has condensed that thing down to two quarterbacks at this point. You're talking about highly touted Joey Gatewood out of Bertram Trail in Florida, and also Bo Nix out of Pinson Valley in Alabama. Two very highly recruited guys for the Tigers. Also here recently, the Tigers have made some strides with the 2020 recruiting class, basically jumping from number 29 all the way up to number 13 in some recruiting efforts. I believe that all of this got started with Big Cat Weekend. Now, speaking of recruiting, this does not necessarily mean that you will have a number 5 or a number 1 recruiting class. I had the thought, though, Auburn really has never done any type of variation to their uniform. Now, this is something that has become commonplace in college football, to where college teams will have interesting variations to their uniform. You even look at Vanderbilt, for example. They have like a uniform where they have, instead of the V on the side of the helmet, they actually have a boat anchor on the side of the helmet. And then they have, different color coordinations that they use. That's very typical, especially, really with teams across the nation. Now, the SEC is a little bit more popular than we might want to believe. I think the only two teams that don't, three teams that don't really variate too much is Auburn, Georgia, and Alabama. Now, occasionally, Georgia will do the blackout uniforms, where they actually did a blackout some years ago against Auburn. Went pretty well, beating Auburn 45-20. Then they did it again in a bowl game against Hawaii, and then they did it against Alabama. That didn't turn out too well, where Alabama beat Georgia 41-30. Louisiana State, LSU, they do variations with their jersey. Primarily, LSU likes to wear the white jersey, both home and away, but every now and then they will wear the purple jerseys, which, they are all right, And Arkansas does the variation. I think, I know South Carolina does a variation. Florida does a variation as well. And Kentucky, they do the variation where they have the silver helmets. Even Mississippi State gets in on the action. Ole Miss has varying uniform. So Auburn is a team that I feel, from a color coordinating standpoint, they could actually pull this thing off. Now, you got to make sure that you do it right, though. I've seen some variations online that were just absolutely just not going to work. Just imagine you coming to Auburn under the lights. You're not, they just coming out of nowhere, and you have this just terrible combination of orange and blue, and that thing can get real ugly. The only time in recent history that Auburn came close to any type of variation uniform-wise was Auburn against Louisville, where Auburn came out, and all of us remember when most of us who were, really watching Auburn football at the time in 2015, Chick-fil-A Kickoff Classic, coming into the Louisville game, Auburn comes out with these astoundingly orange shoes on, and we were like, okay, you have certain sectors of the Auburn fan base that was like, hell yeah, man, these things are slick. And then you got other sides of the Auburn fan base that was like, nah, I think, they could have done something different. I wasn't necessarily overly a fan of the situation, but one thing I did like was the fact that Auburn did something different. That's what the alternative uniform is all about, is doing something different. Kirby Smart in 2018 was asked, okay, of course, Kirby Smart, Georgia football coach, has enjoyed some very nice recruiting classes for Georgia since he's been there. Also a part of a great tenure at Alabama as well as a defensive coordinator. They asked him, hey, are you going to do the blackout thing this year? This is in 2018. And his comments basically, I'm not going to quote him per se, but his comments alluded to, hey, talking about the Auburn game, we don't need anything, don't need uniforms necessarily to get us hyped for this particular game. And if we need to have uniforms or any kind of other external realities to get hyped for the Auburn game, then something is definitely wrong. He said, I'm not really discounting the fact that this could be a good thing. It's been done in the past, obviously. But if nothing else, it's good for recruiting. And if a guy who, consistently has great recruiting classes makes a statement like that, you have to understand that the player's appearance plays somewhat of a role. Because if you think about even, some of us who choose, where we want to work, how we appear at work, we want to have a certain perception of ourselves and how we feel about what we're doing. And if the uniform is not congruent with our beliefs, we may or may not work there. So that's no different where kids are choosing to go to different colleges. They want to know that's why they try the uniforms on. They have pictures with the uniforms on so they can see and they can visualize what it's going to be like wearing this uniform week in and week out. Now, I'm going to say this. The traditional Auburn uniform, there's absolutely nothing wrong with Auburn's uniform as it is. I would go out on a limb and say that an alternative uniform is not particularly necessary even for the Auburn Tigers, especially when you talk about the white uniform. I really like Auburn's away combination. It's all white, but somehow that orange and that blue and orange, that white, it really coordinates very well. So I would say Auburn doesn't necessarily have to or even need to do it, but just for the sake of doing something different, like 2015, maybe switching it up occasionally. Not quite like some of the teams like, say, Oregon, for example. Auburn has this real hot date with Oregon in the Advocare Classic first game of the year. Now, one of the things I'm looking forward to, just even outside of all of the X's and O's, all the position matchups, all of the things that are quote unquote at stake, even though this is the first game of the year, whatever team loses can obviously recover with some success down the road. But outside of all of that, I want to know, because this is Oregon's MO, this is something that they've created as a standard for college football, is their different variations of the uniform. Black uniform, all green, all yellow. When we talk about the Advocare Classic, most of us, even if we're not thinking about this directly, we're thinking about it kind of subconsciously. What uniform is Oregon going to wear to the Advocare Classic? Also, depending on this, is Auburn going to do the home uniform, or are they going to do the away uniform? Because, humans, whether they care to believe it or not, are very visual creatures. Like some people who, both men and women, don't know nothing about football. Some of us don't know anything about football. And we'll look at two teams that we've never seen play before, and we will choose our favorite team based on the uniform. Okay? So visual aids are very important. Okay? Now, Auburn's visual aid, currently nothing wrong with it. But what if Auburn could come up with a very, very unique alteration to the current uniform, say a blue on blue? Or say, for instance, I saw a couple of real crazy stuff where they had the traditional tiger on the front and then small numbers in the corner. Things like that to kind of vary this thing. Now, I was even thinking, like, say, for a game like Tulane, for example, a game that Auburn should obviously win. And Tulane just so happened to be an old rival of Auburn. Maybe get nostalgic with that thing and find a modern way to duplicate the, uniforms from the past, from when these guys were playing the first time around. Something like that. Now, don't make it a common thing, because I actually like the uniforms as they are for Auburn. But like I said before, just for a change, just to show, your recruits, or just to show your fan base, or just when you're starting to build a brand, that you're willing to step out of your comfort zone. Because when you think about the traditionalist forms of the traditionalist subculture of the Auburn fan base, which represents a high percentage, I think, of the Auburn fan base that will tell you when this topic comes up, there's no need to alter the uniform. Sometimes you just got to make a change just to kind of sort of fit with the current trends of what's going on. No, don't do it every week, but do it on occasion. Let folks know that you're willing to do it, that you will do it, that you will make some changes, kind of like in 2015 where Auburn came out of nowhere with the orange shoes. You know, the orange shoes were, kind of hit or miss. It depends on, how you're looking at it. But at the same time, it was different, guys. That's the thing. Auburn is going to have to do some different things in order to have some appeal nationally, because that's where Auburn has gotten with this thing to where, if you look at even Auburn's roster, most of the Auburn roster is concentrated in southeastern United States. Starting to venture out a little bit, starting to get some guys out of Mississippi. Had a guy out of Chesapeake, Virginia with Cameron Kelly that showed, some effort on a national front, kind of getting out of the region to recruit some guys. But those are little things that you think of that you can do to make yourself appealing, because a recruit will look at this. Because think about it, when you're in high school, you kind of thinking about this thing from a super, just from a super youthful, superficial kind of way. And you're like, man, those uniforms look good. You come down to Auburn, you try the different uniforms on, you take pictures of. Why do you think when recruits come to the school, they actually try the uniform on? Like I said early in the podcast, they want to see what they're going to look like. Because when you feel good about how you look, your approach to it is not necessarily on a higher level, but when you feel good, the action of football is just as much emotion as it is physical. Okay, so that's where we at with the whole uniform thing. No, I don't think Auburn should, change the uniform every week to where we never know what they're going to wear. But occasionally, guys, switch the uniform up. Occasionally, maybe once a year, maybe once every once in a while, maybe say for instance, Auburn is going to be back in the Chick-fil-A kickoff game next year against North Carolina. That's a good game to switch the uniform up. Why? Because you're playing in a game that's going to be looked upon nationally. Kids from all over the country are going to be looking at this game and they're going to be like, wow. Assuming that you get the combination right, they're going to be like, wow, those uniforms are kind of live down there at Auburn, right? Kind of puts Auburn on the map. Once again, it's Kennard Vernon Stewart. Let me know what you think about this uniform alteration thing. Let me know how often you think, if Auburn decided to kind of kick something like this off, how often should they do it? Or if they should do it at all. Is it even necessary? All right, Fearless and True Gang, like I said before, comment on this particular video. Subscribe to Vernon Speaks Sports Auburn. We're looking very much forward to this particular season. Very excited. A lot of moving parts to the season. Gus Malzahn is really going to have to come with it this year to sustain his position as Auburn's coach. Also, we want to get a little bit more solidarity on the offense as Auburn took a step back last year. The main thing that we missed was the 1,000-yard rusher that we have become accustomed to at Auburn. So let me know your thoughts on this particular topic. This may not be the next video, but the next opponent preview video is going to feature Texas A&M. Of course, the Texas A&M rivalry for Auburn in the SEC West has been very unique, as up until last year, the away team always won. Auburn goes down to College Station right after a date with Kent State, be the first SEC opponent of the year. Once again, it's Kennard Vernon Stewart for Vernon Speaks Sports Auburn. And as always, it's great to be an Auburn Tiger over here. Until next time, guys, War Eagle.